started now with the first speaker, and I'd like to introduce Vernell, who is the Joint Secretary of the United Resistance.
Well, first of all, I said solidarity. Can you hear that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, solidarity greetings from UCU, both from the London region of UCU and nationally, which we affiliated to at our last conference, and also from my own union organisation, City Resistance in College. I think this is a really important conference today. I mean, once again, I think what United Resistance has done, and you can see from the platform here, but right across when I look across the room, we have gathered today here layers of activists, trade union activists, campaigners, who are either on strike, have been on strike, or going into dispute against the attacks by employers and the government. And I think it's very timely that we're together, so that we can sit down and discuss amongst us how best that we can, one, make more St. Mungos come true for everybody in the room, so that we can learn from each other. So I do think it's a very important campaign. I also think you get a sense of theme, if you like, in terms of what this conference is like. And if I was to have a theme to this one, there's many of them, but I think particularly it's about how the unorganised workers, or workers who have historically not necessarily been the most organised, are starting to become most organised. We heard just a moment ago from Helen, from the National Union of British Sign Language Interpreters, an organisation, to be honest with you, I didn't know existed until a couple of months ago, have found themselves now starting to be organised almost 50% and so on. And this has been happening in not huge ways, but not insignificant ways. We'll hear from the American brothers and sisters. I mean, I was privileged to be at the TUC yesterday, hearing about their experience of how they built their campaign, and I'm sure we'll get a flavour of that. But one of the amazing things I saw, they showed a video of Barack Obama speaking at his mass rally, and he's speaking, and he says, "If I were a low-paid worker, I would join a union too." And I must admit, you know, the idea of the President of the United States telling people they'd join the union, that's the impact of a campaign, it seems to me, way beyond that of simply fighting for a $15 now, which they are successfully winning in certain states, by the way, but one that's having a massive impact in society and the public. It's 4.5 years since we've had the election come into office of the coalition government, which launches offensive, economic and ideological, on the working class. Economic, clearly to try and claw back after the collapse of the banking system and try to make British capital more profitable again. Ideological, obviously, because they were on the back foot 4.5 years, more than that, 2008, when the banking system collapsed. They told us this is the only way the system could work, and then they found it all collapsed. What was the answer? They were panicked in that system, and therefore they spent the last 4.5 years to try to make sure that they could win an ideological argument inside the working class, why we can't afford a welfare state, why we need to attack, make cut after cut after cut, and defend the abuses at the top of society. That's what they are trying to do. Of course, we know that one of the main weapons they've used is to divide and rule. It's a classic divide and rule. When we was in the pensions dispute, it was public sector workers against private sector workers. Us in the public sector, we're all greedy, high-paid holiday and pensioners, and high-paid holidays and pay and pensions, whereas in the private sector, you know, they just get on happy, getting shit wages, shit pensions, and getting on with it, not complaining whatsoever. Of course, utter rubbish, but nevertheless, this is the picture they tried. They simply failed at that. Let's be absolutely clear. Every time they launched an offensive to try to divide public and private sector workers, the instinct of unity, the generalised instinct of unity, not the sectional consciousness of workers, but the generalised consciousness of workers understood that this is rubbish. If we accept divisions in this way, then of course, then we are doomed. The other way, of course, is a tax on benefits, try and play off those in work against those who are out of work on benefits, the divide and rule. Perhaps a little bit more successful there. The real work we have to do to try and win the argument that why workers on benefits are not to blame for the crisis which we find out. Nasty, vicious, which every single scoundrel ever does when they're on the defensive. What cards do they use? They're a race card. Their attack on immigrants in this country has got to stop. It will stop. Money culture people telling us that immigrants are to blame for the lot of profits, the tax on our housing and so on. Of course we understand there's work to do here. when we look at the support you can get in certain areas. I mean, UCU and CLASS, the Centre for Labour and something, Central Studies, I can't remember what it's called now, sorry, but CLASS, an organisation set up to research for trade unions, has launched a new pamphlet on immigration. We've got, hopefully somebody in London can come along on the 3rd of December at Westminster Kingsway at 6:30 to participate and launch in that pamphlet, which is about why immigration benefits us all. All sorts of things we can do, but I think first of all we need to put an ideological argument against these attacks and why it is all immigrants are welcome here. That's the bottom line. The last 4 or 5 years has also been momentous in many ways. We go back to 2010 with the students' campaigns. The significance of the student campaign can be set up in one thing: their demonstrations, their millbank moment, and all the rest of it. What happened then, I remember listening to the radio in the day, they said the significance of this campaign by the students, they broke the consensus that cuts were necessary. And it's from that campaign we were unfortunately not successful at stopping the cuts in EMA. We weren't successful in rising the fees. But it had an impact. That gave confidence to the pension struggles, the demonstrations in 210, 211 and 212. Again, because of trade union leaders pulling back at the last moment, refusing to follow that through, to reflect the determination and energy of those workers who were on strike, unfortunately we weren't successful to break through there again. But then again, we didn't disappear. The mass campaigns on strikes in 2013 and 14. And actually the successful NUT campaign was here to get rid of GO, which I think needs a massive round of applause. The community campaigns at every local level. I mean, from over housing, over Hovis. I mean, the Hovis workers we struck last year, full-time workers. It's against the question of contracts on part-time contracts and so on. And of course, we hear workers recently, the New Era estate, successfully kicking out the modern-day, artists and trying to grip out. There will continue resistance. What United Resistance was set up for in 2010 was very, very simple. We understood that what terrain we were going into, and we needed a network. We needed a network of trade unions and activists from across the country, in every workplace, across unions, who could build solidarity together. And I think the new phase of struggle which we're entering, mainly at a localised level, but also at national, we see that those networks are starting to be built. When Mandy talks about the Lambert dispute, the longest dispute in UCU's history of 5.5 weeks, they've raised so far £45,000. When I think about UK, over £100,000 collected by those. I was talking to a comrade in Mungos. In 1 week, I think it was, £5,000 have been collected. And by the way, these aren't one-off £10,000 donations. These are activists, like in my own workplace, £2,500 collected in 5 weeks. 4 places like Lambert. These were individual workers giving individual monies so that solidarity could be brought about. That gives an idea that the solidarity networks we need to be built are starting to be built. And we should underestimate the significance. Why is solidarity so important to us? Solidarity is not about charity. Solidarity is about cuts against the very grain of the competitive nature of our society. That's how they rule. They rule by competition, playing off one another against each other. So every time a worker gives any kind of money, it cuts against that very heart and soul of what capitalism and the employers is all about. So solidarity and networks go hand in hand. Finally, I'd like to say this. You know, there's an argument in my union, and it's about national versus local. They say, look, we'd love to have a national struggle. Problem is, we can't hold it. We can't pull it. We haven't got a 99% union density right across the board. Therefore, we're focusing on local campaigns, local disputes, and we'll build up in this way. Fine, good. Every time there's a Lambert, every time there's St Mungos, everybody's job in this room and elsewhere is to make sure they win. But let's be absolutely clear. We cannot beat and we cannot defeat austerity agenda workplace by workplace, casework by casework. It is impossible. We can get victories. When we do, we need to shout them from the rooftops. But if we're going to defeat this government, push the tide of austerity back, we need national action, consistent national action. I hope it's a working conference, that we really get together and swap ideas, solidarity. Let's have a good conference.
Thank you, Sean. I'm now going to call our next speaker, which is Billy Hayes, who is the General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union and a very good friend to United Resistance.
Thanks for the opportunity to address this important session. How can we beat the austerity agenda? Can I just say though about speaking at these particular events? I'm a member of the Labour Party. Good to get the bird somewhere. But thank you.
You're welcome.
And I've been. You know, my kind of theory is I wouldn't leave an organisation that tried to expel me. But in terms of why I've come here today, it's because of the role people in this organisation play in struggles. Now I know as a General Secretary, you know, you become head of blame. For everything that goes wrong in a trade union is usually down to you. Every victory is obviously down to somebody else. But of course, you know, that's the job. I don't complain about that, that's a fact. But the other aspect of it is this. I know that at the end of any conclusion of a dispute, there's criticisms or celebrations, more criticism in recent years maybe, for all of us from particular disputes. But what I always focus on, when our union was in struggle, whether it was in the High Court in 1995 when we were done for 1.5 million, I always reflect on those people who were there when we were in struggle. Yes, they may have a criticism of this or that particular dispute, but I reflect because, as somebody once said, it's not what you say, it's what you do. So that's why I'm here today in solidarity with people who have been in solidarity with the CWU whenever we've been in struggle. And of course, when we talk about austerity, what the prime aim of austerity is to place the burden of the economic crisis upon the working class. It's not strictly related to the crisis, or that was a factor. It's about shrinking the state. In fact, it's even about going back to the Middle Ages when we began to develop what is now the nation state. You could go back. And that was a progressive move, and the gains that we made post-war were absolutely essential in terms of helping and combating the attacks upon the working class. But what we're seeing now is a transfer of wealth from the poor to the wealthy. Living standards for the vast majority have fallen since 2008. Meanwhile, the richest has grown by 1%. The richest 1% has grown wealthier. And Larry Elliott pointed to something, a very evocative way of describing it. You look at all these London buses. The wealthiest people on this planet could fit on one of them London buses. 85 people. And they have more wealth than the poorest 3.5 billion people. Think about that. 85 people have more wealth than 3.5 billion people. We can land something on a comet racing through the universe, but we can't put food in kids. What kind of wealth? But the crisis of 2008 is all about the failure of private markets. Economic activity fell because popular outlets for investment has been reduced, and these outlets remain because very speculative and the financialisation of mortgage debt. But now, even now, critical market conditions remain largely in place. The Office of National Statistics found that at the end of 2013, there was a hoard of 501.9 billion in underinvested cash built up by private firms in the UK. So when someone tells you there's no money, the money is there, it's just not being utilised. And these firms prefer steady rate returns rather than productive investment. Presumably these people are just waiting for wages to plummet further before moving their capital. To address this, we require a good deal of political will from the incoming government. But through investment, the economy will achieve genuine growth again. And we must aim for a recovery that's based on rising wages, because people will spend that money, and rising benefits for the creation of good jobs. This week, the TUC found that only 1 in 40 jobs created since 2008 are being full-time. So the market is not correcting itself. We need public investment by the government, or government direction of private capital from the banks. The investment also has an impact on the public spending deficit, and this is the most Orwellian, bizarre, Alice in Wonderland feature. Increasingly, economic activity allows for government spending on employment to naturally fall, and increase in revenue, obviously, it's going to, but the result is clear. Investment expands the economy, raising living standards and reducing the public sector debt. Even the International Monetary Fund, did we ever think this would happen? Recently called on infrastructure investment. And actually, even Osborne himself and elements of the Liberals are now recognising the key part of it. The IMF found between 2015 and 2020 a 1% of GDP increase in infrastructure investment was raised GDP 2.8% and reduced government debt by 1.75%. That's the IMF saying that. So we're expecting the Labour government to we're obviously expecting we're not expecting the Labour government to take up this particular path. The leadership's stated goal is to maintain Tory spending plans for 2 years and achieve a budget surplus by the end of the parliamentary term. If they adhere to this, they will not expand the economy, not raise living standards, or even close the deficit. No more than Osborne have been able to do with similar policies. So we believe we need to popularise the alternative in order to have a prospect of having a government that is prepared to carry it out. And all of us activists have a responsibility to seek a broad-based, united actions against the impact of austerity. This means action on issues such as public sector pay, yes, but also the defence of the independent living fund for people with disabilities. We need an alliance that's simply broader than just unions. We have to connect with local communities and with every social group who have been assaulted by austerity. United Resistance, we believe, plays a part in that, particularly in arguing for unions to see the need for a wider unity. It's not simply enough this or that dispute, or even this or that national dispute. The option for unity is not just simply the Westminster consensus. It's also about the reactionary social programme which follows from this adoption of austerity. If you're going to cut benefits of the disabled, you have to convince those without disability that the disabled can do without. In the film Avatar, there's a great little line. Where one of the people, he says, if somebody has something you want, then you have to demonise them in order to. I mean, it's almost talking about the nature of imperialism. So that's what it's about, attacking the vulnerable. And we as trade unions have to play an important part in that. And we have to tackle head on the rise of UKIP and say what it is. This is Nigel Farage can't get away with using racist language, 1966 Race Relations Act. But I don't know how many people have seen the interview with Cathy Newman and Farage. He said he believes, caught on camera saying, he believed in an insurance-based welfare system. I think that's called the USA. But she asked him, then he talked about it. And what Farage's trick is, I think it's wearing very thin, is if you ask him about a policy that seems to be unpopular, he moves backwards. So he says, oh, well, he doesn't believe in that now. But he was caught on film saying that. But then he was caught on film saying that our women who've been off work and a child would have less value to their employer. So Cathy Newman, who's just been off work, she's the Channel 4 News presenter, for those who don't know, asked him, am I any less valuable because I've had a child? I've been off work, and I have problems with contacts in terms of being off work. And he wriggled, and he didn't know what to do, and if it's not on YouTube, somebody should put it on. Because it's all about blaming the poor. It's all about attacking the poor, and we need to tackle this barrage. So, you know, in terms of the position where we're at, yes, there's been a growth of minority parties and major problems in places like Greece, Ireland and Spain, which I haven't got time to go into at the moment. But I'll just finish on this, because we also need to tackle how we're portrayed in the media. How can it be, given the size of the Labour movement in this country, that we're hardly ever on television? And we're only ever on television in order to this or that strike. There's an issue there that we need to look at. But finally, because you know, anyone who wants any of the stats in there, I'll put this speech on my blog. But this is another important point, and it's about memory. See, I'm old enough to remember when I worked in John West Foods and they jailed 6 dockers in the East End of London. And we were in Usdaw, no disrespect to anyone that's in Usdaw, but it wasn't renowned for being a particularly militant union. And we had a lunchtime meeting, 500 of us, right? And I was a bit younger at the time, obviously. And the shop steward come in and said, I've just heard on the news, they jailed the dockers. And I can't even remember who said it. And someone said, that's it then, isn't it? And everyone walked out. Now this was a unionised workplace, yes, but it wasn't a workplace that was renowned. And that's a memory we need to have. And apologies if I've heard this, may have heard this story before, but the most important thing that you can do if you're an activist, to have a bit of hope, have a bit of optimism. That doesn't mean to say that any of us are beyond criticism, but to say to someone, look, I remember a time, and it might just be a tea break for those workers who still get tea breaks. It might just be a washing room or whatever. Every ounce of struggle, because Paul Foot famously said, all boats rise together in struggle. All of us benefit from each other's struggle. All of us benefit from each other's victory. So keep fighting, keep up the work. In the end, we will win. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Billy. Okay, our next speaker is Helen Davis, and Helen is from the Unison NEC, and she was crucial in the dispute in Barnet over the privatisation of the Barnet Borough Council.
Well, as these things are, one of a number of people who were crucial, to be honest. But look, I've loved that story about the British Sign Language. I work for a local authority where it used to be called Barnet, it's now called Capitalville, and I can think of some really good sign language. I don't need any translation, and it isn't that either. So, you know, the latest brief update in Barnet is quite overwhelming. We've got the proposed privatisation of the LEA and catering, the depot workers, which covers refuse, parks, gardens, street sweeping, libraries, children's centres, early years, and the whole of adults' social services. Out of 1,800 centrally employed staff, we expect to have around 1,400 still outsourced, 400 left in the local authority, with schools going over to academies. There won't be people working for our local authority within about 2 years' time. And at the same time, we've got a restructuring of our pay terms and conditions going on, which we believe is an attempt to make us cheap for the private, to be privatised. In addition to this, we're covering the dispute with our outsourced workers, Your Choice Barnet. They're support workers who have been fighting a 9.5% wage cut, very, very similar dispute to KUK. We've taken 4 days of action, and we're talking about more days to come. Hopefully it will coincide with Lambeth College. But as you can imagine, I gave this, I had a little shop meeting yesterday with colleagues, and one of my colleagues, he's got an enlarged heart. He's got a big heart. He's a big-hearted guy, so he's not a Tory. And read out that, and he started having palpitations. It's a good job we work in a hospital, but because it's overwhelming, isn't it? And that is the problem for a lot of colleagues who are facing ever-increasing intensification of work. You're so busy trying to hang on to that job, to maybe do 2 jobs, that it's hard to lift your head up and look at what is going around. So you end up taking. And this is where I think leadership is absolutely critical. And I don't have good news today, unfortunately, because yesterday the ballot result came out, the consultative ballot result for Unison on local government pay offer. A pay offer which Dave Prentice thought was a rubbish offer, but somehow was good enough to cancel our dispute on the 14th of October and to have us balloted over it. And that ballot has resulted in 20% turnout, 64% have voted to accept. That's a problem, isn't it? It gives us a huge problem. I know that in my branch, a branch that's fighting hard, it was bitter for our activists not to be on strike on the 14th of October, because it then leaves you in a position where you feel like, Jesus, we have to take all of this on our own. Yeah. And it's, how can we do this? And you have to answer those questions if you're a leader. Is it possible to defeat what is going on? And does it look likely? Because if somebody's going to lift their heads up and make that extra effort, they want to know it's worth it. And the problem we have is a leadership that doesn't think it's worth it, that doesn't have any answers. And I think we have to start questioning. If some of our leaders are getting up £50,000 to £100,000 a year, I don't need you to tell me that you don't have an answer. Anybody can say they haven't got an answer. I expect you to come up with some answers, not just name the problems, but come up with some. It can't be, well, we get Labour elected, because nobody in the union leadership that I've heard, even Dave Prentice, maybe that's a bit of a slur, but even Dave Prentice doesn't believe that Labour will deliver. So if Labour isn't going to deliver, what do we do? Just carry on taking it? I don't think so. That's not why we're in this room, and that's not why we support events that are similar to this. We've got a job lot on to organise from below, because when it comes to organising, nationally, locally, whatever, it's about linking up disputes. One of the best moments of my year, because now and again we do have them, was when our Your Choice Barnet workers went on strike their second day. We just happened to coincide it with KUK colleagues coming down, and they joined our workers lobbying their employer on the picket line. And it was great, because the employers for YCB weren't expecting that. I thought, thank God the transport worked out and it happened. And then our workers went and helped them lobby their employer. And it was a great experience. Workers coming together, sharing that experience. And that's something that can be replicated. The problem is we've got left to local levels, it's really tough. And I think we do have to talk in this conference about how we develop a movement that can overturn what is happening on the national level, so we can get that kind of get rid of the national leadership and have some leadership that counts for something. Because I think whoever gets elected next year, we have to make our voices count. Because and then Labour was in power for 13 years, didn't deliver. And that's why a lot of people aren't going out to vote and are voting UKIP, unfortunately. But I think that we have to, if we've learned anything, we have to make our voices count for whoever gets in next year. The fight has to go on, because giving up, it means an option of just giving way and giving in to everything. That is too heavy a price to pay. So I look forward to further discussions about how we deliver.
Great, thank you very much, Helen. Okay, our next speaker is Roger Hutt, and he's a KUK striker and who have been out on strike for 12 days now.
Hello everyone, thanks for that amazing welcome. I'd like to start by sending my apologies to you from Madge Dalton, who should have been here today, could not get time off work. Madge was made homeless by KUK and had to move back to Newcastle to live with her parents. She is heartbroken, having to leave the job that she loved. As you are aware, recent developments may have brought an end to our dispute. 90 days. That's how many days we have accrued, fighting to defend our careers, the well-being of the most vulnerable people in society, and to offer hope to our children that 0-hour contracts and minimum wage is not the legacy we intend leaving behind for our future generations. We have taken our cause all over this great country of ours, and the support we have received has been overwhelming, as all recognise that our fight is for all our sakes. We have had private discussions with Ed Miliband, our MP, asking for his support in our struggle, and have recently taken it all the way to the Houses of Parliament, where twice in the last month I have spoken to MPs about effecting change in regards to private sector companies stealing NHS contracts.
Burn to them!
And what this means, careers being ended, the most vulnerable people in society being deemed as commodities to be bought and sold for profit, is morally reprehensible in any civilised society. We even managed to get all 3 Doncaster MPs to join us in the latter meeting, where a lot of home truths were delivered in their direction from yours truly, believe you me. One of my union colleagues after the meeting said, "You just had to do it, didn't you?" My response was, "You should know me by now. If it needed to say it, I will say it." I am aware that a bill is being proposed on the 21st of November in Parliament that aims to change legislation relating to private companies bidding for public services. The KUK strikers, in no small measure, have played an integral part in this hopefully being passed into law. We are all, I'm sure, in this room aware we're in the middle of a class struggle. This supposed age of austerity, where we are told to budget whilst big business, the bankers and the establishment, are awarding themselves substantial pay awards, is a national scandal. The disproportionate distribution of wealth between the have and the have-nots is the worst in all the G7 countries. Food banks on our streets, 1 in 5 working below the poverty line. Poor doors, what the hell is going on? It really is a return to the world of upstairs, downstairs. What's next for the Tories? A return to the Victorian values of the workhouses? Sending children back up the chimneys? The return of rickets, consumption and diphtheria? These soulless corrupt pariahs are the true enemy within, who must be removed from office come next May. Well, the ramifications, if they are not for us all, do not bear thinking about. For us, the KUK strikers, the irony of having our momentum at an all-time high and taking it all the way to Parliament, and at the same time seeing our numbers dwindling, has not been lost on us. As we recognise that many who have left, losing up to 40% of their wage, have had no option but to look for work and employ elsewhere. And just as importantly, not wanting to work for a company that puts profit before people. We are immensely proud of what we've achieved in empowering other people to realise that you can stand up in the face of adversity and affect change. There are many in this room who recognise that. So if it is to be the end of the road for the KUK strikers, we hand over the mantle to whoever is in a similar position to say it can be done and you can win, as St Mungos have recently proven. But rest assured, you have not heard the last of the KUK strikers. We are Yorkshire folk with fire in our bellies. We never know when to quit. like to end in stating for me to have spent the last 10 months in the company of so many like-minded, amazing, some rather eccentric people has changed me into becoming a citizen of the world. Many in this room today that I hope will now become lifelong friends, but we could not have done it without you. And to the band and brothers and sisters of the Care UK strike, I will defend your honour till my dying day. For we are all of the same mind that humanity is what we represent, not the pursuit of wealth over all the considerations. For if we all stand together in strength and solidarity, we will prevail. So I'll finish as I always do by saying we must all keep the faith and never surrender.
My name's Alvin. I'm a unionists student at DSG, which is the principal in McDonald. Basically, all of next week, because we've done a week Friday, we're on strike all of next week. Because our claims for an 8% pay rate, because that fight that we're fighting is actually a fight that many people in this room will be fighting, and that's because we are actually fighting the 1% pay cap imposed by the government. And because DSG is a trading fund, we're actually meant to operate like a private company, despite being fully owned by the government, so all the money's circulating. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And so they're saying we're capped by the 1% pay cap. Now, this is despite the fact that they've got £67 million in the bank, which is the profits we've made for them. And so the workers have recognised this, and we want that money back, basically. We've done 2 days of strike action across all the sites. That was in October. And now we've gone for 4 days across all the sites. And the word is it's going to be solid. We've actually recruited loads to the union. At the start of the campaign, we had 370 members, and now we're around 430 members, I believe, out of a workforce around 500. So I think it's going to be absolutely solid. The Sturdens actually shut the site for the 2 days of strike action, and they're thinking, we'll put a picket on a Monday, we won't need to do the rest, because they're going to shut the site again, you know. So all I can say is that if you can send us a message of support to dsgstrike@yahoo.com, we'll read those out on the picket lines, and what we need is support from other people, because the fight is actually for 8% because they've got the money to pay it, but actually what we are fighting against is the 1% pay cap. We're actually fighting against that. Yeah.
Right, hello everyone, I'm Connor, I'm the Deputy Secretary of Haringey NUT, and we've been organising a series of strikes this term throughout Haringey over two things. The first is that the head teachers in Haringey have said that they will not fund trade union representation, which they're legally responsible for doing, unless they have a veto of who represents the NUT. That isn't going to happen. That will never happen. Yeah. And we've constantly conducted ballots in the borough and are taking strike action because of that. The other thing that has happened is a Labour council has suspended our Secretary, Julie Davis, on trumped-up political charges, and are seeking to sack her, thus doing the work of the head teachers for them. And therefore we're taking action about those two things. This is important for the whole trade union movement. If the boss can sack the rest, we're all in a very bad place indeed. Okay? The good news is, we had a ballot. In the first school we had a ballot in, we got 100% in favour of strike action. because of that, the action we've taken is escalating strike action. We've got suicide ballots going on now across the borough. We were picked up by the Daily Mail. We made the front page of the Daily Mail. And a number of you have seen the Twitter store that hit the Daily Mail after that, and it shows you doing something right if the Daily Mail hates you. Now, we're involved in negotiations this week with the head teachers, and we think that we'll make progress on facility time. If we don't, we'll just keep on striking. But the big issue now is a Labour authority is victimising a trade union rep. A trade union rep with 14 years of experience who has defended her members throughout that time and has got a huge amount of respect in the borough amongst people who work in teaching. My head teacher called her the Bob Crow of Haringey. He meant it as an insult. I didn't take it like that. She's using it in her election campaign. This has gone around the board. It's a lobby of the local council. It's important. We need to make sure that an immoral Labour authority cannot sack. They are morally outrageous to think they can sack a student. They can't sack a trade union rep. Only we, the members, can sack our rep, and which we can choose to represent us, not them. So please, can you bring your union banners along to the lobby on the 24th of November? It's at 6 o'clock outside the Haringey Civic Centre. We want to make a big noise. We want to tell them we choose our reps. We're for representation that we decide, and we're against victimisation. Thank you very much.
Apologies to people who didn't put their hand up, but there will be opportunities in the workshop, so please make sure that you get your hand up to speak at the workshops. Our next speaker is Jasper, who is some activist rising against the case.
I'm going to speak really fast because I've got a lot to say and I've only got a short time to say. Austerity for me is the magnifying glass that amplifies racism and discrimination right around the country. The rise of UKIP and the rise of racist and religious bigotry and attacks because of the atmosphere that has been promoted by the neoliberal contingent of our parliamentary democracy that suggests that the economic crash should be borne by the very poorest people in our community and not the reckless casino bankers who gambled away the nation's fortunes on speculative investments on the international market. And they thought they'd fix that crash in 2008. Then we had LIBOR, and last week we had Forex, manipulation of international money, with these banks being fined millions and millions of pounds. These bankers should go to jail, not be fined millions of pounds. Secondly, we've got to recognise, comrades, that the politics of fear and hatred unleashed by the Tories and others that have create the illusion that immigration is the biggest issue for the United Kingdom. Immigration is the salvation of the United Kingdom. That says immigration and immigrants are to blame for the follies of this country. We know where the real enemy lies, and it lies in the City of London and the banking houses of the international. Now we have a society in which this government feels it's appropriate to cut people with disabilities benefits and leave them in states of serious depression and sometimes suicide and poverty. We have black women who are being cast up by Labour authorities. Labour authorities are disproportionately sacking black women who make up 7% of their workforce, but make up 65% of Labour redundancies. And we say to the Labour government, do not ride along with the Tories with their austerity cuts. How can you even contemplate voting for a Labour government that's going to stick to the Labour and the Tory spending cuts in the first years of its election? I say that's an abandonment of your commitment to protect the working class. And let me say this, where the Tories went today on immigration, they went there because they were led by a Labour government in 13 years of power that brought trust on immigration. Where the Tories go today in terms of privatisation of the NHS, they were led there by a Labour government that started a protest and brought in BFAWU. Where they go in terms of failing to defend and attack people's working conditions, they were led there by a neoliberal Labour Blairite government who led them down the path to austerity and ideological attack on themselves. And now we have the situation where not only are we now fighting racism that has been unleashed in a scale never seen before, but we have the rise of UKIP. And I urge people to go onto my blog and have a read of my latest article, which absolutely demonstrates that there's a UKIP cell of Metropolitan Police officers who are arresting people on request, as requested by Gerard Button, MEP, a special relationship, and that has been thoroughly exposed on my website. Please do have a look and read on that. As I finish here, comrades, because time is tight, I say, yes, we do need unity in the fight against racism, but opposing UKIP is not the total fight against racism. Standing up to UKIP is absolutely a necessary part of our response to the situation, but it's not a sufficient response to defeat racism. Black youth imprisonment has gone up 100% since August 2011. Black youth unemployment is 60% and skyrocketing highways. Immigration, we now have a new Immigration Act that asks landlords to check on the immigration status of black people who come to rent their properties, taking us back to the, if you want a nigger neighbour, vote Labour, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. These are the realities of the racism that we face. And we need the trade union and labour movement to not shy away from the fight against institutionalised power, systematic racism of the police and the judiciary, and leave us abandoned to their wholesale criminalisation of our communities. We need you to include in your fight against racism, not just standing up to UKIP and all that they oppose, not just standing up to the EDL, but the routine warehouse wholesale racism that so destroys black people's lives in this country, institutionalised racism and racism of this government. Thank you very much.
Jasper from BARAC. And now I'm very pleased to be able to invite Adam Lambert from the fantastic...
It's a real pleasure to speak today and report the news of our victory at the homeless charity St Mungos Broadway. Now, earlier this year we had a new senior management brought in into our organisation with a clear determination to break our union. And in July, union reps were called to a meeting and informed that from the next day, frontline pay for new starters was to be slashed by 19% and staff terms and conditions were to be changed forever. We were told that the link to the nationally bargained NJC scale was to be severed and that pay would instead be determined by the market median. And the market in supported housing reflects the market everywhere else. Declining wages for frontline workers and obscene pay rises for those at the top. And all of these changes were to be introduced the next day, but they told us they were giving us the courtesy of telling us beforehand and that we could let them know what we thought about those changes after they were introduced because they were holding a retrospective consultation. Such was their arrogance that they, when we said we're putting this into dispute and you must follow our disputes avoidance procedure, they didn't even accept there was a dispute because they disagreed that we had a legitimate disagreement. So, no one works in our sector unless they're an executive director, of course, for the money. But the idea that those who do work with the most vulnerable in society require respect in order to deliver a decent service was not only felt by our members, but I think it's understood by the public too. And just to give you a taste really of the kind of leadership we now have in our organisation, we have an HR director who wrote in our industry press a few years ago about how austerity and the cuts from local governments can be used to root out poor performers by making them redundant and grow an organisation as a result. But she didn't just stop there. She noted that those people in our sector who lose their jobs, many won't be able to pay their rent, many won't be able to pay their mortgage, many will become depressed, many will become dependent on drugs, but that was okay because it represented a further business opportunity. This really represents the sick priorities of our sector and the sick priorities of society at the moment in general. So a clear attempt was being made to break our union and to throw so much at us in the hope that we wouldn't be able to defend very much at all. But we fought back, and what we didn't do was really try and kid ourselves at all that there was any attempt at a meaningful consultation. We didn't start looking at the minutiae of all the changes to policies and procedures and fight for the crumbs that they might be willing to give us. We took them on everything. We called a members' meeting which voted unanimously to move towards industrial action. We then set about contacting every single member in our workplace to convince them of the need to strike. And when we balloted, we got a 96% yes vote. Met before our members' meeting, which determined the action that we were going to take, and we knew that we had to take serious action. We couldn't take, a 1 or 2 day strike that management so easily could have just ridden out. So we knew we needed to take serious action and convince our members of that, and we proposed 5 days of strike action to our members at that initial meeting. And we won the argument about needing to take serious action. Members were convinced of that, but what we didn't win was the argument to take 5 days, because our members said, actually, we need to take serious action, let's take 7 days. For those 7 days, we didn't just picket and go home, but we took part in 12 different protests across London, getting support from some councillors and MPs in the councils which had contracts with St Mungos Broadway. That pressure was really important. So it's an absolutely exhausting week, but an absolutely liberating week too. And we received solidarity from trade unionists and workers across the country. And I want to thank Unite the Resistance in particular for the great support that they gave. At the end of those 7 days, people weren't trickling back into work. We took strike action, and over the course of our dispute, our membership grew by 50%. And we knew that they were then on the ropes, and when our first strike ended, we voted to escalate and strike for 10 more days, and that was crucial, because on the eve of that 10-day strike, management backed down and we won. Work with greater confidence and a stronger union than ever before. And our chief executive, it was quite bizarre, he asked to speak at our victory rally. I don't know how he thought that was a good idea, but he was booed back into his office by workers demanding that he takes a pay cut. transforms people, but it also transforms what we believe is possible in society. So we need more victories like ours. Again, I want to thank everyone who supported our strike and our solidarity to everyone who's fighting against the bosses and against this government. A different kind of society is so necessary, but it is so winnable. We won, so can you.
Our next speaker is Anne Lemon, and she is on the NUT NEC.
Well, how do you feel that? If only my union had given a lead instead of 1 day strike action back in 2011, we'd said we're coming out for 7 days. We've been a completely different ball game now. Over the past few years, I'm not going to be pessimistic because we've been involved in some really inspirational action. In Bristol, we've had 5,000 teachers kind of been on strike, marching through the streets, and these are people who haven't taken action before, who've been invigorated by what they've done. And we have won victories. The first strike, we won the right for those who were 50 before 2012 to keep their pension rights. The second strike, we won an increase in the pension accrual rate. The third strike, we stopped Michael Gove ripping up our conditions of service. And on the fourth strike, the 10th of July, we stopped Michael Gove full stop. Workload, but there is a real frustration in the classroom because I'm a classroom teacher as well, and what I notice, my colleagues in schools are frustrated, and what they're frustrated about is that we've taken action but we haven't taken enough action to win some of the major concerns. And it seems to me that when we do win these victories that I've talked about, we should put our foot harder down on that accelerator pedal rather than taking it off. My union is embarked in an amazing public campaign aimed at getting parents, trade unions, academics involved in the debate about education. We've published an education manifesto which has been really well received. We've got teachers up and down the country getting involved in stalls. But I fear that unless this political activity is matched with equally hard-hitting action, we will not make gains on the two main issues that started off the campaign: pay and pensions. We've had ballots, we've had surveys, we've had votes at national conference. We should be taking strike action 2 days before Christmas. It's unlikely to happen. But what is happening is action in local schools. Many schools are threatening action and heads are backing down. I'll give you a quick example. Oasis Academy in my area, the head went in and told the staff as from next week they will all be doing a lunchtime duty. The staff got hold of me, we had a meeting off-site, 40 staff came, we told the head we'd had a hand vote for strike action, we'd taken an indicative ballot, and she next day apologised to staff and said they would not be taking members were really pleased, but they said we want another meeting on next week. We want to look at the directed time budget because they felt confident about having won a victory. They wanted to move on. There's no question that the leaders of our union, Kevin Courtney and Christine Blower, are fully committed to us winning on all fronts. But as far as I know, no action requested by any school has been turned down. In fact, as officers, we encourage to support members of schools taking action over workload, pay and bullying management. I think we should have been out with the health workers on the 14th of November. And the big elephant in the room is the election. And we've seen union leader after union leader rowing back, keeping their powder dry in the hope that the Labour government will be elected and things will get better. That ain't going to be the case. Tristan Hunt, the Shadow Education Secretary, has said absolutely nothing about removing any of the savage attacks that this coalition government have brought in. The NUT, though not affiliated to the Labour Party, is not immune from the pressure to avoid mass strikes before the election. But I think the biggest weapon we have to get rid of this coalition government will be mass resistance. And let's not forget it's passivity that leaves space for UKIP to offer their repulsive solutions. Our goal is to support every strike, every act of resistance in every workplace to give people confidence and solidarity. But we mustn't lose sight of the big prize, national coordinated action. And we mustn't swallow the myth that because there is passivity and low action around the country due to the cuts that nothing will happen. Let's take a bit of inspiration, not just from the amazing victories we've heard about today, but let's look across the water at Ireland. When they had the first set of austerity cuts, 20% teachers' pay and pensions were cut. Very little resistance, a lot of passivity. Look what's been happening in the last couple of weeks. First, we had 100,000 people on the streets about the water privatisation. It's equivalent to 2 million in Britain. Then last week, we had 250,000 people marching against the water privatisation.
Okay, our final speakers from the platform are from the Fast Food campaign in the United States. We've got Flavia, Cabral, and Alvin Major and Nick Allen. And Flavia, we're going to ask Flavia, Alvin and Nick to speak. Flavia is a worker from McDonald's in New York. Alvin is a worker from KFC in New York. And Nick is the fast food organiser.
The privilege of being the global coordinator for the fast food campaign. I'll be very brief. I just want to thank Unite the Resistance for inviting us, and particularly thank the Bakers Union for hosting us here in the UK today. One reason that the fight for 15 in the United States has spread like wildfire and has become this phenomenon that it's grown from one city, starting in New York City with 200 brave strikers in fast food, then spreading to 3 major cities with further strikes, then 7 cities, then 50 cities. And then last September, 150 cities where fast food workers put their spatulas down and walked off the job. Yeah. Other sectors of the economy, and childcare workers, home care workers, Walmart workers are all calling for now $15 an hour in a union, and they are starting to strike for it. One reason we've seen cities like Seattle raise the minimum wage to $15 for all workers in the city. Now San Francisco is doing it. We're talking about Chicago, Los Angeles, San Diego, New York City at $13.37 an hour next year probably. One reason for that is that when you hear about this campaign in the United States, and you hear about it on the television, in the newspaper, when you hear about it, what you hear is striking workers. You will not hear from me or people like me or trade union officials. We do not appear. And so to honor that tradition and to hold up that principle, I will now shut up. Alvin Major, who is a KFC striker from Brooklyn, and Flavia Cabral, a McDonald striker from the Bronx.
I would like to tell you a story. A little over 2 years ago, I was working at KFC, 3 different stores, average 84 hours every week. And I was getting 3 paychecks, no overtime. So an organizer approached me and explained to me how I've been getting robbed, wage theft, and all these different things in the workplace. So we, a few workers get together, and we had like a little eagle-in and article, and we decided that $15 is like a livable wage for us. So we came up with that amount, and we decided to strike. I went on 6 strikes so far. The last time I strike, I'll do some civil disobedience and get arrested. We went and sit down and shut down 42nd Street in the center of New York City. Before strike, I was getting paid $7.25, and we already see the government decide to raise it to $9. But it's $9 3 years down the line. So the first year we get $8. By the start of next year, they will take it to $8.75, and then a little more down they will put out. I think the end of the next year they'll put it. So we will need this raise. 3 years ago, they decided to give us the raise 3 years down the line. So I don't understand that kind of mathematics. Anyhow, our fight has shown progress. Our fight is showing progress because other states, even though we started in New York, other states some states get $11, some states is 12, one state is 15, another state, one state even saying they want to get $15.60 or something like that. So we might gotta take the civil one a little bit more or something. But that's my story. And it shows that when you strike and when you stand up for your rights, you see progress. But we gotta unite. The word union, I think it comes from unity. So we got to stick together and stand. And the next thing I wanted to say to you guys is that I'm working for minimum wage that could barely take care of, I got 4 kids. It could barely take care of pay my rent and pay my bills. I'm always back on my bills, I'm always back. So, and now, if I get injured on the workplace, I still have to go to work because there's no benefits. So now if I'm injured or if I got sick and I go to work, and I'm preparing food for people, and I'm sick, I could spread disease. So it's not only the workers, but even the people that come in and purchase the food are in danger. Thank you so much for inviting me today. Thank you.
Hi everybody. I just say my name is Flavia Cabral, and I'm one of the workers in McDonald's that I get same minimum wage that you get, $8 an hour. There is not enough money to live in this way. I have 2 daughters, and one of them, my biggest daughter, she dropped school, and I have the second one, and I'm worried so much about my second daughter because I don't have money to make her to go to the college. I don't want the same thing happen to my big daughter, to the second one. As soon as I see the union and being striking for have the rights that we're getting $15 an hour, I say, I had to do something. I had to fight for something, even for my daughter, for the future of my daughter. So I don't want her to live the same life that I'm living right now. I want her to be educated, and I want her to have healthy care, and I want her to be a best future that I could get for her. So I don't want to be like she had the same situation, like my big daughter has it. The second one, I don't want her to be in that situation. Imagine if we're working like you guys working in the bakers, and you're making bread for being selling in the store. So many people making the bread, one bread, together to make one bread. Like I say, so many people to make one sandwich. So we have to be together in this to get what we need, to get our respect for us. If we be united, like we are we're doing in the United States, you see how he say one city, second city, and we have 150 cities together. So they listen to us. We get what we need. We need to be united. If we do individual, we're not gonna get nothing. So we are now getting together to be together more stronger, to be more stronger, and going to be global. So they have to, we have to make the difference. We can't sit down waiting for they to give it to us. We have to fight together. We have to be united. We have to be doing stand up for everything we need for, because we really deserve. We are the workers. We are the people below the economy for each country. So we sitting down and do nothing, how are we going to proceed? So we have to be all together. We have to think about not only to yourself, to the whole world has to be in this organization. We have to be together. That's the major word that we have to have. Together, we make our dream come true. And that's why I'm striking for $15 an hour in the union. Yeah. Together and united, we're going to get it. Thank you.